No. It's just a green turtle shirt. Like, they don't need to see that.
You used to work at the Green Turtle?
Nah, I got it one night when I was there with my brother.
What they were just doing? Passing them out?
Yo, what's going on? This is Relaxing Nosy _ Jackson. I'm here with my amigos and compadres this evening. We are here to bring you another episode 74 of the Highly Advised Podcast. How are you guys doing this week?
Doing good, man. It's your boy, Lao Shay, a.k.a. BIGCOZY, Too Cozy, the original bad guy. Yes, that's me, the main event. What's up? Here we go. Let's go. Episode 74. Spence, let them know who you are.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Spence from the Highly Advised Podcast. Like my co-hosts have said, this is episode 74. We got a lot in store for you this week. A couple things have happened over the past week since the last time we touched base with y'all. So we want to tap y'all in on some things. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good. Actually, I would be doing a little bit better if they go and follow us on our platforms, which would be, if you want to check us out at the YouTube video, go on YouTube and check out the Highly Advised Podcast. If you want to check us out on Instagram, just to see the notifications of when things get posted. And whatever other things that we got going on, whether it's questions about hip hop, MMA, anything in between, you can check us out on Instagram at the Highly Advised Podcast. Or if you want to just hear our thoughts on just anything that's happening in real time, check us out on Twitter at Advise Highly.
How's the weekend been for y'all? Like, how have things been?
I mean, the weekend's been good for me, man. I can't really complain. Another week, man. Another week here, another week out there, if you want to put it that way. I mean,
okay.
But all in all, I can't really complain though. It's been a good week. Yeah, I can't really complain. It's been a good week for the most part. How about yourself, Lau?
Man, my weekend, it was cool. I can't complain. Actually, Nigel, he came over. I shouldn't say spent time, but he was hanging out with the family and all that stuff. All that good stuff. We're inviting him in. We're trying to jump him in. So he's really ganged now. So,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why he was a little upset and all that, because we got some good licks on him. He was really punching him in, but he's good. He's solid now. And then I went to a Hispanic festival today. It was cool. It was a good experience. There was a lot of people out there. Different cultures for sure, because there's a lot of Hispanic countries, the Latino community out there. So that was a cool experience. So I can't complain. Weekend's pretty cool.
Yeah, shout out to the Latino community, man.
Yeah, shout out to the Latino community.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's pretty dope though.
Yeah. Well, Nigel, how was your weekend, man?
It's good, just chilling out, watching football. My team lost, unfortunately. So it is what it is. We're 1-1, but we will come back, and it is what it is.
Hey, man, it'd be like that sometimes.
It is, man. We all take losses,
Yeah, hey, man, it comes with being a boss, right?
Spence, I feel like you have something you want to say. Is it?
Nah. Is it not the truth though? You don't take losses on the way to success.
Hey, you have to. You know what I mean? Sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes like one loss, it doesn't hurt anybody.
Exactly. Ryan Spann is the best person to tell you about it.
Well, he did take a loss last night. For anybody who watched the fight last night, Anthony Smith has completed a 3-fight win streak, with Ryan Spann being the third person. Finished the fight in the first round by TKO. Yeah, it wasn't really the best showing for Ryan Spann. Anthony Smith, got a quick start and pretty much hit him until the fight was over. I mean, that's kind of a general breakdown. But yeah, what did you think about it, Lau and Spence?
Well, here's my take on the Anthony Smith fight with Ryan Spann. Can't take anything away from Anthony Smith. He did what he needed to do. He came there and he punched Ryan Spann the fuck out, made him get on deer legs, wobbling. And then he, when he fell down, it even looked like he got punched when he actually got dropped. It looks like he just fell down because he was already, lumped up and concussed, and he was falling backwards, tripping forwards, and all that other shit. And then, so Anthony Smith went ahead and he started dominating him. It just looked like it was he was just a level or two above Ryan Spann. And Ryan Spann was swinging a little wildly, which made him vulnerable. I mean, not vulnerable, made him open to getting countered. And Anthony Smith did a good job popping him with some drives and some straights. And honestly, I think the biggest thing about the fight was the post-fight with Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann getting into it a little bit. But what I will say is it's either Ryan Spann, he just has to get up and try again after taking a beating, or this is going to be his ceiling. And I wasn't trying to rhyme.
Real quick before you get your word in, Spence. One thing I noticed while I was watching the fight was that Ryan Spann and Anthony Smith did get into like a little bit of a ground exchange, and I was thinking maybe he might have got tired out, and that's why he was like kind of hittable towards, the TKO. And that's really all I can say. And maybe, just being in the main event spot with that going.
He got rear naked, remember? And he tapped up pretty quickly.
Oh, okay. So he didn't get him with a TKO. He just dropped him and then got him with the rear naked.
Yeah, he tapped super fast.
I forgot. Okay.
It was like,
Well,
I'm done.
I was thinking that maybe like on the first, tangle on the ground, he might have got tired out, and that led to, the finish of the fight. But that's all I was going to say.
I don't really think them having any type of groundwork in the beginning really had that much of an impact, because it was still the first round of the fight. Now, if he blew his load in just the first round, then it shows also why he's not a top 10 fighter yet, because he was ranked number 11 going into this fight, and hopefully he would have made it into the top 10. But even Anthony Smith said after the fight in the post interview where Ryan Spann, he's a good fighter, but he was just a couple steps ahead of him every step of the way, because you saw where Ryan Spann was getting tagged, got on deer legs, and it just seemed like he wasn't able to recover at some point. He did prior to that, when they were on the ground, he was able to get himself in a certain position for a second, but it didn't do too much. But even like Anthony Smith being on a 3-0 streak at this point, he did what he was supposed to do. He was pretty much it was a gatekeeper fight, for the lack of better terms, where if Ryan Spann won, he would go into the top 10. And of course, we know how it will look for Anthony Smith. But it's a good fight. He won. He did what he's supposed to do. He protected the garden, for lack of better terms. And hopefully now I think he's looking at trying to get a top 5 fight now. So, which I think hopefully it would, being on a 3-0 streak, I think that might be the best. Hopefully that should be put him in a better direction, because I'm quite sure he wants to go for the belt again at some point.
Yeah, I think he's one win away from getting a next shot at the belt. I've seen that already. He might be rematching a guy that he fought already in Alexander Rakic, whatever. Yeah. Alexander said he's ready in December. So Anthony Smith really didn't take that much damage in this fight with Ryan Spann. So I could see them fighting in December if they could put, pen to paper and all that shit. If Anthony Smith wins or Alexander wins, because he's also on the win streak himself, I think that should be a title eliminator bout, really. But at the same time, you still have Yuri Prochazka, whatever. Forgive me if I mispronounce his last name, of course. But he's still in the wing too, and a lot of people are clamoring for him to be next for the belt as well. So, little interesting thing going on in light heavyweight. And all I have to say is about damn time.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Light heavyweight was kind of cleared out for a bit of time, and that just because of John Jones being champion for so long. So all these people, like even with Glover being in the title shot, now it's just kind of interesting to see how it's all kind of shaping up. I'm not necessarily mad at Anthony Smith for getting the win. I think it's actually pretty good that he's been able to build a 3-fight win streak, and I think that with one more win, he would be in the title picture. And I'm curious to see what happens. I think that Yuri is more deserving of a title shot at the moment, only because of like the type of wins he's been getting. And I think that it would be more interesting to see him in the title picture right now, just because I would be curious to see him versus Jan.
Man, that's a good take. What's your take on the big one though? That's going to be happening next weekend, UFC 266, because there's 3 big fights.
But this weekend.
Yeah, this by the time the listeners hear this, is going to be a few days away. from the actual pay-per-view card, UFC 266. But we got 3 big fights, but the entire main card is pretty good as well.
Well, let's do you want to go through the main card and just talk about the fights we want to talk about real quick for the listeners?
Let's just start with the main event. Let's do it.
All right. So we got the main event next week, listeners. It is UFC 266. Interesting matchup between the champion, Alexander Volkanovski, and the challenger, T-City himself, Brian Ortega.
I got Volkanovski in this one. I mean, Brian Ortega, I mean, he's made his path before, but I don't know. I just see Volkanovski coming away with the win on this one.
I'm actually going to go with Ortega. He's the underdog currently. I think he has enough striking to keep Volkanovski at bay, but at the same time, I think like if the fight does get to the ground, I think his jiu-jitsu will play a serious factor. I think Volkanovski is a jack of all trades, but he's not he's a master
of none.
Right. But I think he's really good at strategies and game plan. Like he'll go in there and his team knows what the fuck to do. Hey, we game plan. That's how they were able to beat Max twice, because Volkanovski can also adjust as well. He's pretty good at that. So let's not take that away. I just think Brian Ortega is the better fighter, but I think it's just really going to come down to who does have the better game plan between the two, really. Volkanovski could very well implement his very well. He does have better wrestling, but his wrestling isn't like a world-class, isn't like a Habib, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning Habib, that's the only person I could think of at the top of my head right now in the lighter weight classes was dominant wrestling. And I'm pretty sure let me bring that back. Chad Mendes, he used to be a 145er. And Chad Mendes, he was a good wrestler. He's known for his wrestling as well. But I don't think Volkanovski is that type of fighter where wrestling is put first. I think he's more like, hey, I'm going to stand and not bang, but I'm going to stand and trade with you if I need to, but I'll get you to the ground if there's an opening, because that's part of the plan. So I don't see Volkanovski using his wrestling like that unless he really needs to. And he's good at his wrestling. I'm not going to take that away from him. I just think Ortega has the better skill set. I think on the feet, he's a better striker. And if it goes to the ground, his jiu-jitsu will carry him. So that's it for my little breakdown.
I'm going to give the fight to Volkanovski. I think that this fight might be a little easier to game plan for than Max. And I think that Max is something like, because he was able to actually game plan for Max twice the way he was, even though the second fight is, highly debatable. I would say that I think that he can game plan his way around Ortega as well. You know what I mean? I think that his skill set is good enough to be Brian Ortega. Now, I mean, me personally, I'm more of a fan of Brian Ortega, so I would rather see him win. But at the same point in time, I think Volkanovski takes it by decision.
All right. So what you think about the co-main event then?
What is the co-main event? The co-main event is Valentina Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy. Interesting fight. I think Valentina Shevchenko takes it easily, though. I'm not going to lie. I think Lauren Murphy's kind of earned her way to the title shot over these past, few fights that she's had. And I'm not necessarily mad at her, but I just don't think that she has what it takes. I don't think she has the skill set to go in there and beat Valentina, because Valentina's skill set is just so much better than hers. This is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I got Valentina first round TKO or second round submission if Lauren surprised the first.
Yeah, I'm kind of going with a first round TKO, if anything, from Shevchenko. Same perspective of she's just more dominant. I mean, I think we had a conversation about this earlier this year, just about in terms of how we didn't really see anybody coming out and beating her anytime soon. So I don't really see Murphy being the person to actually be that change factor. So I got to go with Shevchenko as well.
Yeah. But for underdog batters, we go on Lauren Murphy and she pulls another Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey. I know you're going to walk home with a bag. It took you 6 years to get a bag.
If she wins, I'll be surprised.
I bro.
We got another fight after that, and the return of Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler, the rematch. What do you guys think about this? I think it's like, what, 15 years in the making or something like that, if I'm not mistaken?
Somewhere around there.
This is a pick'em fight.
Right.
And the reason why I say it's pick'em, because one, Nick Diaz hasn't fought in years. While Robbie Lawler has been active, but he's also on a severe decline himself because he's been in so many fights. He come from the same era of Nick Diaz, and he's been fighting, but you can't fight as long as you're fighting and not take some losses. And Robbie Lawler has been taking some losses because, he's getting older and these guys are getting better. The younger guys are coming up getting better. So to me, this is a pick'em fight. I would like to see Nick Diaz win. I think we could get some fun matchups if he wins. And plus, it will look good for freaking pay-per-view buys and not that we care about pay-per-view buys, but it'll look good for marketing, I guess, for the UFC and all that. But at the same time, I wouldn't be mad if he loses as well. I really can't pick I'm for the sake of predictions, I'll lean over to Nick Diaz, but it'll be like a decision. I don't see him having an easy time with Robbie Lawler. I just don't, because he hasn't been active.
Yeah, and I think the inactivity is like a huge factor in itself. Granted, like I would probably want to go with Robbie Lawler just because he's just been more active, but like you said, he's on a decline as well, which is a huge factor in itself, especially as talent is rising. But in the same breath, this is someone that's from the same ilk as him, from the same time period. Only difference is he just hasn't fought as he hasn't been as active in the past few years. So I mean, I probably will go with Diaz, but it'll probably come down to a decision. Possibility he may be able to stop Robbie in the second, but that only really depends on what Robbie Lawler we get coming into the fight. Because if his chin can take it, because we know his style. His style is stand and bang, and we know neither one of these fighters are going to back up once the bell rings. I don't see the fighter saying like, "Oh, let me get on my bike." So it's very possible that this fight could go into this Diaz could end Lawler by the second round, but a safe bet, I would just say Diaz by decision.
Yeah. Now this is a 5-round fight as well.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So it's going to be they're treating it like Nate Diaz and Leon Edwards.
I don't know how they do it either, man. I don't know how they do it. Just don't question it.
Listen, man, I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same as boxing, but listen, I need Cozy to get on his soapbox at some point.
We might have to get to that day one day.
Yeah. Why are we having a 5-round fight?
For two guys are nowhere near a title.
A grudge match.
No.
I don't even think it's a grudge match.
Not even.
Yeah.
I think they were both chilling at home peacefully.
Yeah. Easily. Dana was probably like, yo, listen, I need to fill someone out on this card. What do you guys think? Lawler said he's down to fight anybody.
No, that's not the way it happened. Dana was like, hey, look, Nick, what do you want? Like, what do you want? He's like, look, I'm not coming back unless you give me this amount of money and it's 5 rounds. He's like, all right. I'll make it happen. And that's what happened. This hasn't happened for anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Only for Diaz and Connor, the Diaz brothers and Connor.
And that's it. Yeah. It might happen for Brock. You know what I mean?
It might happen for Brock Lesnar. Exactly. Yeah.
So the way, my bad, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking that's just so scammy. That's all, man.
The way I see this fight going down, I think about it. I'm going to choose Nick Diaz. I don't care because I'm hoping that he comes out of his hiatus and he's able to go and, essentially have the better skill set than Robbie Lawler, which I feel like if Nick Diaz was active, he would. But I mean, he hasn't been active for, quite a bit of time. So who knows how this fight's actually going to go. But I want Nick Diaz to win because I want Nick Diaz to win. Shouts out to Robbie Lawler, though, but I don't want him to win this fight. So it just is what it is.
I mean, and like Lau said, though, if Diaz wins, I think it makes it more interesting just because we know at that point, he's not going to be a one and done.
Exactly.
He's going to want to fight again. And
I would hope.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I just hope they don't. I hope they just don't try to catapult him up and try to get him as close to a top 5 fight as possible. Or
you know what's going to happen if Nick wins, Jorge Masvidal BMF fight, or Nick versus Usman.
I'm telling you,
that's a scam. If he's fighting Usman, if he finds himself fighting for any belt, any type of belt, this is a sham. This is the same sham that Lau talks about in boxing. It would be the same exact sham.
I'm not going to dispute that, Vince. I agree. I think it wouldn't be fair for Nick Diaz to get an immediate title shot. BMF belt doesn't mean, as far as I'm concerned, Usman is the BMF champ.
Exactly.
As far as I'm concerned. So as long as he doesn't fight Usman, I think the world would be okay. Honestly, what if they try to angle a fight between Nick and Conor if Nick wins? That one I think fans would get behind because it doesn't mean nothing for a title. It's a fun fight. Plus, Dana's going to get his pay-per-view buys.
I could see that. I could see that happening. And, Conor, could definitely be talking all of his shit and then try to angle another, Nate fight as well. So that's even double the money for the UFC. Why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting, definitely, if that's the case. But I mean, we all know Conor's going to respond at some point on Twitter during this fight. During or after this fight, he's going to make some type of response. It's just a matter of what. So
before we did you guys have anything else to say about that fight in particular?
No, I pretty much agree with what you guys were saying about Nick.
There's two other fights that I'm looking forward to on this fight on this card, and they're actually not on the main card. They're the return of Dan Hooker, and there's another fight with a woman flyweight. Her name is Manon Fiorot, I think is the right way to pronounce her name. She's an up-and-comer, and I'm curious to see what she's going to do against her opponent.
The only other fight that the main card is pretty good. It's a solid main card.
It is.
But I'm actually looking forward to the Cynthia Calvillo versus Jessica Andrade fight. Because every time Jessica Andrade fights outside of Valentina, it looks like she's on the verge of knocking out her opponents, beating them up to a pulp, et cetera, et cetera. But Cynthia Calvillo, she's a dog. She can fight. Yep. Even though I believe she is the underdog in this fight, I wouldn't be quick to counter out. I think that's going to be I think that fun is fun. That fun. I think that fight is actually a more competitive fight than Shevchenko and Lauren Murphy, in my opinion.
Yeah, that fight might be back and forth, and I'm curious to see. That fight's going to mean a lot for, who goes forward as far as towards the title shot. You know what I mean? Jessica Andrade is always around the title.
Yeah. Even though she just lost.
Right.
She got taken to school.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we kind of had that conversation before, though.
Yeah.
So I didn't even recognize that this fight was on this card. But yeah, from just looking at both fighters, I'd probably go with Cynthia Calvillo on that one. But Calvillo. How?
Calvillo.
Yeah.
Calvillo.
That's what I said. Calvillo.
I thought you said Calvillo. My bad. I was trying to correct. My bad.
Calvillo. But nah, I don't know. It'll be interesting, definitely, with that fight as well. Because I mean, like you said, Jessica Andrade, she does find herself always looming around that number 1, number 2 spot, or just in contention for the title. So this should be an interesting fight. I think, and on top of it, I'd rather probably see her lose, Jessica Andrade, just because at some point we know she'll be in contention again. And she's like, because it at that point it can't, very different, but it can end up being one of those things where we had like DC and John Jones, where John's always going to be the champion. DC, prior to John being gone, he was just the number 2 guy there. No one else could beat him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see after this weekend.
Well, I know that, with all the stuff going on in the UFC, it's kind of interesting because you have a couple of things going on in just MMA in general. There was a new promotion kind of announced where they were going to have a lot of benefits for fighters and different things. I'm not sure if anybody has necessarily looked into what all they're offering the fighters, but it seems to be a league based off of the NFL and NBA and other sports leagues that are you know, essentially well-known organizations.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, go ahead.
My bad.
Yeah.
So I didn't. All I know is Ariel Hawani just reported on, I want to say Substack, some type of forum page, I guess. But he reported that one of his sources or multiple sources, whatever, he was told, hey, there's an organization being put together, it's being backed by somebody with a lot of money. And they're planning to pay their fighters like 50% of the revenue, which other sports leagues like NFL, NBA, what they similarly do for their fighters. While the UFC, they pay like 16% or something like that. So I don't know the logistics, the organization, the game plan of it. I suggest listeners actually to look into it and read up on it and to come up with your own thoughts and your own beliefs about the matter. But on the surface level, I think it's very interesting if a new organization or league comes out from this, because if they're paying fighters more on a general scale, you're going to start to see some of the top fighters in the UFC, Bellator, even one championship, so PFL. Hey, man, I want to go to this new league because they're paying me more. I might be making $50,000 to show up and $50,000 to win UFC, but this league, they say I could go in there, get paid $200,000. So why would you want to keep fighting for the UFC if you don't get paid more over there? And then you'll start to see a migration of all the best fighters in the world trying to get in this league just to get paid. And then people will start turning into this, start looking at this league. But once again, it's all theory. It's just surface level. Once again, I suggest the listener to look into the stuff.
Yeah, like I definitely agree. Like I do advise the listeners to look more into it, but this does seem interesting. From what I saw, I believe it's even broken down into conferences of like just by country. So you have North America, South America, Europe and Africa, and Asian Oceania or something. So they really want to make this like because it's the World Fighting League. So they really do want to make this like a global thing. So I don't know. I think this could be something interesting for just the sport itself, because like you said, it will probably push. There will be a lot of fighters that, depending where they are, where they're ranked in their own league at the moment, for money reasons, they'll probably leave, because it's like you said, if I'm able to get $200,000 for a fight versus 50,000 to show, 50,000 to win, so that's 100,000. 50 of it's not even guaranteed. Right. Why would I not go somewhere where I'm guaranteed 200,000? So
win or lose.
Exactly. Like, and then you never know what the other incentives are, because if they're trying to structure this as, if they want to structure this as like other professional sports that we see, like football, basketball, I wouldn't be surprised at some point we're going to have, like, if they're breaking it by conferences, if the conferences are based off the countries, more than likely you're going to be able to have team in North America's team. You'll probably have your starting 12 or whatever the case may be from the US, and you're starting 12 from Asia or whatever the count number is. But all these fighters are probably getting incentives. So now you'll have fighters getting the incentive of, if you're on a 3-fight win streak, you might get this, or just because at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to find a way of franchising the fighters. Now, right. I think from one standpoint, I think this is hugely beneficial for the fighters as well as for growing the sport. I do think in the long term, I can see how it could possibly be one of the things that could possibly change the sport. Maybe not for the best, just because we'll probably have more. Because now, like the issues that we see now in the UFC, where we have a lot, where it comes down to like certain money fights, where fighters are now saying, "Hey, I want more money for this fight." I don't think that ever changes. If I'm getting paid $200,000 at this promotion now, I'm gonna realize like, hey, instead of $200,000 for this fight, I want $500,000 for the fight. So. Right. So I think that may be an issue, but other than that, and I mean, of course, I think there's always going to be the negligence of boxing that may find itself in the sport at some point. But until we get to that point, hopefully they set up guidelines and just make it structured well enough that it helps prevent those things. But all in all, I will say I think this could be something very interesting for the sport. Definitely with it coming out in the next 2 years. I think 2023 is its launch date. So should be pretty interesting.
What I will say is that I think that competition is good. And I think that competition will only make the UFC do, and other leagues for that matter, measure up to give fighters what they should be getting as far as benefits and pay. So that's a good thing. I think in order for this league to be successful, they'll have to really look at some of the things that are taking boxing down and some of the things that are taking out some of these organizations and really like try to learn from it. I think if they try to like add like a whole bunch of belts and different things and make the system complicated, I think that's essentially what will, drive people away from this organization. But I think that if they do it the right way, then I think that it could be like the leader if they have the money right. Because, at the end of the day, these people who are the best, yeah, they want to be the best, but they also want to be paid.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I think you want to be paid at the end of the day. Like, compensation is like the biggest goal, especially when you have fighters like having concussions. And I believe in the article that you sent over, it said something about like even in the contract for the fighter that the fighter will have like a early retirement clause, right? So or a concussion clause or some. Long story short, it's a clause in the event that, let's say, they get injured and can't fight anymore. So which is something that we don't really see in other sports as much, or the fight that's been going on for the past couple of years, especially from not even fighters themselves, but just athletes in general, of being compensated heavily after fighting. So or just after the sport in general. So I don't know. I think this could be really interesting, especially financially. But even then, we don't even know. Like because we've seen this happen in history before, where they've had people try to compete with the NFL, creating their own NFL leagues and all the right ideas, but it just didn't work out. So, but we'll see. One or two things that happen, and this is what the last thing I'll say is: either the World Fighting League will grow and blow up, or what'll happen is whatever we'll see from that structure, other organizations will adapt to, and just to secure their number one spot still and keep their fighters, and they'll just have to bite the bullet of, for lack of better terms, of paying your fighters more, paying your fighters what they're worth at the end of the day. So
as long as all the talent is essentially under one umbrella, which that's my hope, you know what I mean? As long as the best fighters are fighting the best fighters, I don't really care too much about anything else.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not a lot of promotions either, because I think that's the biggest issue I think that happened in boxing in itself of, when you have multiple promotions, then, like Bob Arum. Oh, no, Terrence Crawford, I can't give you that fight because you're not going to sell me, and you're not going to put enough seats in the stands. Like,
yeah. Who's going to get the lion's share of the percentage of live gate pay-per-view? We have to bid for this. You got to bid for that. Well, you just won the bid. Well, now I get this percentage. No, all this crack of shit. And the fight won't even be that good.
Exactly. It'd be this whole side A, side B thing. And at the moment, that's the last thing. I think, especially for the sport of MMA as it's growing, like you said, it's the BS that you don't really need, like accompanying you and as you're trying to grow the sport. So
exactly.
But yeah, and I one thing I didn't get a chance to check out, but I saw Vice posted it, was the Dark Side of the Ring. They put out a new episode, The Plane Ride from Hell. I didn't have a chance to check it out. I think Nigel sent it in the group chat. Did you have a chance to check it out, Nigel?
Yeah, I did. I saw it, and it was a interesting documentary about a well-known event that happened in, I would like to say, the early 2000s, Lyle.
Yep.
So yeah, essentially what happened is that the WWF at the time had, they were rebranding. They were on the verge of a rebrand.
Right.
And I think they were essentially over in the UK, and they, had a night out there, and they had essentially a private plane for the wrestlers. So they flew over to the UK, and then they're on the way back. But on the way back, they said that they were stuck in, the landing strip for maybe like 8 hours. And they had a hell of a lot of alcohol and drugs. And essentially, like, it was that's the thing. Like, for a long time, people heard that story and they were like, oh, the story's wild. The story's wild. Well, this Dark Side of the Ring episode said, hey, like, this plane ride was actually like no fun at all, because, they were going around, drugging people on the plane. People were exposing themselves. Brock Lesnar was wrestling somebody on the plane, and they said the plane almost flew out of the sky. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? So they said that pretty much it was like one of the worst plane rides for a lot of people, and something they hope to never do again.
Sounds like a party bus. It just sounds like a crazy party bus, man.
It's crazy. I've also read online that Ric Flair, he lost some commercial deal or something through the shit. Another wrestler, he got suspended from some promotion due to like what was revealed during the plane ride to hell.
Right.
Apparently there were sexual allegations that was going on. One of the flight attendants, she was like suing Vince McMahon because she was sexually assaulted or some shit like that. So, and I don't want to say some shit like that like it's lighthearted. I'm saying that because I actually didn't watch this episode, but I know of the story because it is one of those stories. Shit, if you listen to fucking Jim Cornette, all these other wrestler guys, they'll tell you. Fucking Kurt Angle has the podcast, and he was talking about some of the shit too. So the plane ride from hell is one of those well, it's not mythological because it's real, but it's one of those stories around the wrestling community that's like, hey, if you were there, you know how fucked up that plane ride was. And it wasn't because the fucking pilot was fucking up. It was because
the wrestlers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
People got fired apparently after that plane ride. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Perfect. They said that he got fired because something happened and they thought it was him, but I guess it wasn't. Like there was a lot going on in the plane ride from hell. So it's an interesting documentary. It's just it's kind of crazy actually.
Yeah, I have to definitely check that out. Where can I check it out at?
YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube. So
for free.
Well, I would say, listeners, watch as soon as you can, because YouTube, they also did the Chris Benoit Part 1, Part 2 on there for free. I watched it through that. But I think like when they release the next episode, they take the episodes down. So okay. I would just say they probably put it out there for free to let to engage the audience, but definitely watch as soon as you can before it's like, no, you got to go on Amazon or wherever you buy your digital movies or documentaries.
Okay, so yeah, just like the listeners, and I'll make sure I'll be checking this out pretty soon then, because that's like especially if you can get it for free, because I do know the Dark Side of the Ring. For listeners who haven't watched any of the Dark Side of the Ring series, it's a really great series about just the behind the curtains of like just wrestling itself. Whether it doesn't even matter what promotion, it's just based off wrestling events and wrestlers across different promotions within just the wrestling community. So,
I mean, if you really want some proof of that, watch our clip that we had on New Jack. We definitely did that a few months ago. So, you could check us out and check that out at the same time.
Yeah. New Jack, the Montreal screw job, just dirty shit behind the scenes with promoters and wrestlers. They're not what you see on TV. There's a lot more to it when the camera stops recording.
Oh, there's a hell of a lot more, man.
So do you think that Westside Gunn was watching Dark Side of the Ring this week like everybody else, seeing as he's a big fan?
I wouldn't say it's unrealistic for him.
Okay.
Since, it seems like at every pay-per-view, he's front row seats. So when we saw him in Las Vegas, wrestling fan, we bought his wrestling merch.
Shit, wasn't he at All Out recently?
He was there too.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge wrestling fan, man. I think he even I think he talked about some of that in one of his recent interviews, whether it might have been $1 million worth of game or the I-95 interview. But like he super big fan of wrestling, man. To be honest with you, I like I said before, I really think, and I think even Lau may have said this, like he really should do like a theme. He should do like a soundtrack for one of these like wrestling events at this point, just because he's so incorporated in it. And I think even the wrestlers understand and accept like, oh, who he is from the rap community.
Well, if the listeners go to our Twitter page, we said that he should do the theme for one of their new wrestling events. They got what is it, Full Gear coming out soon. He could do the theme for that. I don't think they have one yet.
That would be hard.
Yeah, shouts out to Westside. Did you guys see that he finally put a firm date on Side B? Did you guys see that? And did you guys see all the features and all the producers that will be on Side B?
Yeah, I saw. So is Tyler, the Creator, going to be a feature, or is he going to be a producer on Side B?
He's listed as a feature on Side B, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did have some say in some production for the song that he's on.
Yeah, like that's something I wouldn't be surprised at when it comes to Tyler, the Creator.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting, man. Like, I'm curious to see as to how this side is going to be. Now, I got a question for y'all before we, dive deeper into this album or whatever. When you guys look at double disc albums, do you judge them as one disc at a time or both discs together?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think I do it as both, I think. Because in one sense, I look at, because they're both, to me, even though there's a side A and side B, I know typically to me, I take that as, hey, I have these two different ideas that I want to put out, but I don't want them. I have these two ideas that I'm working on and I want to put them out, but they just aren't cohesive together as one. So, and I think that's more than likely what it is. Because let's be honest, I mean, the side A was primarily a lot of Stove Got Cooks. And then if that had came out with this, where a second side is Jay Electronica, Tyler, the Creator, and so on and so forth, Pharrell being a producer on it, I believe as well. Like, I'm going to approach it differently. But I mean, I look at it from a collective standpoint as both, but I also look at it as like, okay, what side do I prefer more musically as well? So, but in terms of like this album itself, I'm anticipating side B. I will say that much.
To answer your question, Nigel, I think the way Westside did it, I'm gonna judge these albums separately. Because I'm gonna use Scorpion as an example. Double disc, it was obviously promoted as double disc, but he released it at the same time, and everybody treats it as one album. Somebody's like, hey, I prefer this one over this too, but they never said, but you don't see two separate categories for Scorpion Disc 1, Scorpion Disc 2. For this, Hitler Wears Hermes 8, Side A and Side B, he got a brand new cover for Side B and everything. It's going to have, when you go on streaming platforms, it's going to be separate. I feel like, to me, it's a separate album. In a sense, this is Hitler Wears Hermes 8 too, but he's just calling it Side B. And so to answer your question, if it's released like this, where the first half is released 3 weeks prior and the second half is about to drop, they're just two separate albums that happen to have similar names.
Yeah.
Real quick before you say, go ahead and then I'll get my opinion last, Spence. Go ahead. You're good.
Well, no, what I was going to say was, because I get where you're saying, where it's like looking at them as two different albums. But I mean, to me, I guess if he's packaging them that way, I guess we have to look at it from two separate albums. But to me, I also look at it from the standpoint of, he even said like, hey, he didn't want to put out Side B, because to me, I think Side B is probably the actual Hitler Wears Hermes 8, right? Okay. Because I mean, even he said like, this is the end of the series.
Yeah.
So like, with that being the end of the series, I think, and we've seen this with other artists before, where they'll take the closing chapter of a mixtape series when they're at a certain height, and like we're seeing here, where they're putting the best features on it, the best features, the best producers that they can. So I don't know, because I know before he was saying that this was supposed to be I think he held off on it because of all like the craziness behind the Drake and the Donda album, CLB and Donda at the time. So I can see how you look at it, how it should be looked at as two separate albums.
Well, the way I see it is like this, right? I think it's all situational. You have like situations like the Love Below speaker box where you can listen to one separately and you cannot listen to the other one. And then you have Life After Death where there's really not a difference between the two. And it's just all a collection of songs. So I think that it really all depends on what the artist is trying to do. In this situation, I would give it to Westside for saying that these albums are separate, not only because of the way he's doing it, but because of the amount of time in between both of them being put out.
Okay. So how do you guys feel then about, because I understand that with like just the time of it being put out. And we all know like how Westside is big on not spending too much time on creating albums in itself.
Right.
How do you guys feel, Grant? Because I mean, he said this so many times at this point. How do you feel about him saying that he'd rather go in, I guess, go behind the closed doors, I guess, not behind closed doors, but he'd rather be behind the scenes.
I think that's where he shines out. I think I've said that quite a few times, that I think that Westside Gunn shines as an executive producer. And I think that, you know, seeing as that's what he wants to do anyway, I mean, like, let's be real, right? Like, whenever we listen to these Griselda projects, the first thing we usually say is it's a well put together project. Whether it's because of production, sequencing, whatever the case is, we just think that it sounds better because Westside had his hands on it. So I think it's good.
Yeah, he's on a run and he's on a streak. Every Griselda, and I'm not talking about Benny and Conway because they have their own labels and it seems like when they drop projects, Westside doesn't have his hands on it. The most Westside will ever have is maybe a feature or something. But outside of that, he's not. This isn't created. I'm talking about like your Amani Caesars, Boldy James, Mac Homies. Every time he has his hands on something, it's like, wow, he's putting this together really well. Where people were saying Mac Homies project is in the running for album of the year and all that shit, just because it just sounded really well, and I think it surprised a lot of people. Now, of course, that conversation has changed now, and it's going to change by the time December hits. But the fact that people were even saying that, like in the real hip hop community, people who actually listen to rap music, I think that's just a credit to Westside Gunn. For him to be behind the scenes more, I'm not even mad at it, because I'm thinking of like, okay, how many more dope artists are we going to get then? For example, Rome Streetz. I know he's not a household name, but you put Rome Streetz out there. Look, Mac Homie. I'm pretty sure if you're from the Buffalo scene, you would know who Mac Homie is. But I guess you could say, people who aren't tuned into like local rap, they're more on a broader scale or more mainstream, they get that little introduction to Rome Streetz. Now Rome Streetz is going to be bigger than what he was prior. Kind of like Mac Homie, man. Nobody was really talking about Mac Homie like that. He does this project with Westside. Now Mac Homie's, he got himself he got recognition. Drake is reposting his songs and all, and I feel like that's just the Westside effect. Me and Nigel were listening to a A$AP Ant interview. We didn't get to finish it, but we were listening to it, and A$AP Ant was mentioning how Westside does his thing with his artists. So he stays in his lane, but he also backs his people and he backs his artists. And I feel like him going to an executive producer role, it's perfect for him, because you can actually tell from Who Made the Sunshine, Hitler Wears Hermes Side A, and more than likely Side B, because the list of damn feature. There's a feature for every track. So it sounds like he is really done with rap. Hey, I'm going to just spit 16. Fuck this. I am done. You guys do what the fuck you need to do. I'm going to make sure it sounds good. We're going to make sure this project's put together well. I'm not rapping for all these fucking songs. Hey, some of these songs I might not even be on there. I might just go boom, 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 boom. That's it. So I'm not mad at his take with that.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect that. I mean, you can't do nothing but respect that, especially like you both said. One thing we have always complimented Westside on is the fact that he knows how to put a project together, whether it's him on it or if it's just the features he has on it. So I mean, I can definitely understand that when we're thinking about in terms of the next projects, because I wouldn't be surprised at moving forward if we're just getting Griselda projects, if anything, because like you said, his artists that he has are just great artists in themselves, right? They're great artists in themselves. And even I think there was a interview I saw with Rome Streets not too long ago, where I guess this was before he had signed with Griselda, but when he was just an affiliate. And he was telling the interviewer, hey, prior to Westside Gunn, I might have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people that may know who I am. But signing to Griselda, it's a whole landscape of people that know who I am now, millions of people. And like you said, I think when it comes to the Griselda sound, you don't get anything better. Westside is probably the sculptor of the Griselda sound, the same way that we talk about other artists / producers, even like someone like IE, like Diddy or whatever, right? Like when we bring up different artists like that, where these people play a hand, just sometimes it's not always in front of the microphone. Sometimes it's just behind the boards. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Westside Gunn's career, especially after this album. Because I don't know, this album, based off the features and production credits, this may end up being like this has a potential to be like probably his biggest reception in terms of projects, just because of just the bigger names that are on this project compared to the prior projects he's done.
Well, speaking of Westside Gunn and Diddy, because I heard you mention his name, I know that Diddy got into a little thing with Jermaine Dupri over the weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so in so many words, I think it was actually, speaking of verses, it was actually Fat Joe's live, I think, which I didn't have a chance to catch that Ja Rule Fat Joe one, but from my understanding, Fat Joe did lose badly and Ja Rule won. But
I feel like people shouldn't be. I don't know. I wasn't surprised by that. And shouts out to Fat Joe. No disrespect to Fat Joe.
I mean, I think we called it.
We all called it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think it's that, but it's also the fact that from what it sounds like, is from my understanding, from what I overheard of people that watched it, that Fat Joe didn't play all the records that he should have been playing. Like some of his bigger records he didn't play. But
well, that's a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. So like you lose off the rip. And apparently Ja played Murdergram in the beginning. So we already knew that was gonna be a long day.
Hey man, Fat Joe shouldn't feel ashamed. Dipset lost too. So, if they can lose, other people can lose too. He'll be all right.
Hey man, Jadakiss won that Verzuz also. So and he might win this Verzuz because he came out and performed during that Ja Rule Fat Joe one. And this one, he may end up being the same, because on Fat Joe's live, I guess he does like his Jopra moments now, and he ended up having JD and P Diddy on his live. JD is saying like, "Hey, I want to battle you. What's up? Blah blah blah." Diddy said, "You're not big enough. Your arms are too short to box with God."
CM Punk reference. You got that from CM Punk. He said,
"What?
Your arms are too short to box with God."
He said that quote, but he didn't get it from CM Punk.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's not from CM Punk.
No, I'm not sure where that's from, but it's not from CM.
That's old.
I stand corrected, listeners. I'm sorry.
That's like an old hip hop punch line.
Well, shouts out to CM Punk then, because I thought he was the one that said it. I for real, I thought he was the one that came up with that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was like cutting up. At the time, All right, sidetrack. At the time, he was feuding with The Rock. The Rock was coming back, and he was like, "Rock, I know who you are, blah, blah, but your arms are too short to box with God." And I was like, "Oh shit, he's giving it to the people's champion."
Oh wow, you never heard that saying before?
No, prior to CM Punk, no, and that was like 2013.
Oh wow, from what I've heard it, I started hearing it in like music. So
Okay.
I think Jay-Z, I think it might have been on Jay-Z's the Blueprint 2. So I think he might have used it in Verzuz. Not in Verzuz, in Takeover. I think he said it to Nas in Takeover, which was like in 2001.
I have to listen to that song again. But
yeah,
what was Diddy saying?
Yeah, but nonetheless, Diddy was telling JD, yo, your arms are too short to box with God. Dr. Dre's the only person I'm willing to see in Verzuz. And of course, everybody said, well, there has been a discussion ever since, rather, on if Diddy's tripping and should he be going against Dr. Dre, or should he be or is JD probably the best opponent for him at this point?
So, in my opinion, I think that JD versus Diddy would be great, and I think Diddy versus Dr. Dre would be great. I don't think that any of those matchups are necessarily bad. I think that people should give Jermaine Dupri his credit, though, because he's not necessarily going to go in there and play around, and he has a decent bit of hits underneath his name. I think people would, they should do their research if they are doubting him. And Diddy does too, of course. I think it'll be a good battle.
Right. I mean, I honestly, man, I think if Diddy goes against Dre, he will lose. I don't think Diddy's arms aren't. I don't think his pockets are deep enough to really battle Dre.
I agree.
But I do think if he battled Jermaine Dupri, it would be a close one. I'm not mad if someone gives it to Jermaine Dupri, because Diddy has enough, but at the same time it's Jermaine Dupri. And I mean, we also know like a lot of Diddy stuff is going to be related to work that Diddy's done, but also he has Jennifer Lopez, he has Mariah Carey, which Jermaine Dupri has. He wrote, I think, Mariah Carey's Diamond album, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, it could go either way. Janet Jackson, I'm quite sure Jermaine Dupri will be able to use. So it just depends on the bag that they go into. So.
What do you think, Lau?
Honestly, I think I don't see Jermaine Dupri losing, honestly, just because of the variety. These versus battles, what a lot of people got to realize is it's not the hard-hitting, lyrical, miracle, spiritual, blah, 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 who has the best. It's, hey, which records help resonate with the people the most?
Right.
And I feel like Jermaine Dupri has that more than Diddy does. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy battle. I'm not, because 112 versus Jagged Edge. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but I just think that you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, I thought Jagged Edge was the bigger R&B group than 112. 112 had that. I'm not saying that they were a joke, so don't take it that way. It came off to me, more people were rocking with Jagged Edge on the grander scheme of things. So
he's got a point.
Mariah Carey.
It's Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
Did Diddy have an R&B artist as big as Mariah Carey? Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Diddy, he had some talent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that, but you can't sleep on JD.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I mean, there's some good points there. I think and I think you were kind of saying this. I'm maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But like, I think the hardest part about this is like you said, if I'm correct, it's not always about like the best song. What was the best charting song? What was like the most lyrical, spiritual, miracle song? It's all about like what hits at that moment. And I think, and that's where Mariah Carey, Janet Jackson, Jagged Edge, it makes it hard. But at the same time, I mean, we also got to remind ourselves, though JD was making a lot of the hits, and I mean all of us especially, because Lil Bow Wow, there's no JD, there's no Bow Wow there's no Lil Bow Wow without JD.
Okay,
right?
yep.
Granted, there's all other factors that play into it, but nonetheless, no So Def, there's no Lil Bow Wow that we know of. It makes it hard just because of like we look at Diddy and we think everything from our childhood, a lot of like what was at the front page of our childhood musically, Diddy was a lot in. Because Diddy was like the face, if we want to say the face of hip hop, or like I don't know what's the most appropriate term for it, but he definitely was like the person that was at the forefront in terms of music videos. He created the remix. Like he has these notches under his belt that it can make him competitive. I think it would just have to be seen. But I do think JD is probably the best matchup for him if he wants to try to come out with a win.
Yep. I for Diddy to come out and say, "Oh, your arms are too short to box with God," he's sipping his Kool-Aid a little too much, because
that's a rock, man.
JD is JD. He does. Well, we can't sleep on everything he's done. We just can't. I think that would be a good battle, though. I really do think it would be. Yeah. Diddy versus JD. I think that's a battle that a lot of people should tune into, because you're going to realize a lot of the music that you were listening to in the 2000s, late 90s, those two had a hand in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think about this part then? So in their conversation, Diddy does say like, "Hey, I'll be outside, and anywhere I've ever been at, I've never heard your I don't hear them playing your music. They play my music, right?"
He said that to JD.
Yeah, and JD replied, "You never been to a wedding? You never heard 'Let's Get Married' played at a wedding?" It's like, yo, listen, man, I don't hear your stuff when I'm outside.
I mean, I feel like, Diddy is definitely talking the talk very well. I'd like to see them battle.
He's the Conor McGregor of talking when it comes to this music stuff. So
because I know that I've heard where to party at a party.
Yep.
So I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure that's happening. You know what I mean?
I listen, man. Listen, not hearing I want to get married at a wedding, it says it for itself. So listen, man, JD has the hits. He's got the numbers. He's Barry Bonds on the low. Maybe Mark McGuire, something to that nature. Pre-juice. Well, actually, we can't even say pre-juice in Mark McGuire's case.
He got a juice one.
Yeah,
juicer.
Him and
what are you like, Meek Mill flamers?
Juicers. That's his shit. Juicing's his shit.
Him and Vitor Belfort, man. Same.
Yeah.
Same dealer.
Well, are you looking forward to Meek Mill's album?
Yes. Personally, I'm looking forward to it just because of the sound when it comes to Meek Mill. I know he did come out before and saying like it took really hopping in the studio with Lil Baby and Dirk to actually and push him and inspire him to actually like get back into his old routine of putting out music, or just creating music rather. But of course, Meek Mill is always, to me, I think Meek Mill has always been like the street artist that has pretty much had, I think he's been one of the forefronters of street music for a while. I mean, I think the biggest issue for him was he was getting locked up or having the issues with like his whole probation and everything. So of course I'm excited to hear what he has to come. Song he did with Uzi, from what I heard, didn't sound bad. Uzi's verse even sounded great on it. So from what I can remember. So I'm looking forward to seeing Meek Mill drop this one. Meek doesn't typically disappoint.
I'll be listening to it when it comes out. Shouts out to Meek Mill.
I'm gonna listen to the album. Listeners on the podcast in the past, I've said, hey, I like Championships. I think Championships was one of, for sure, the rap album of the year when they got nominated for a Grammy. I agreed with that nomination. Championships to me was Meek Mill's best rap album. I thought that was peak Meek Mill. This album here that's coming out, I'm not saying that we're not going to hear good songs, but the songs that he did release, especially the one with Lil Baby and Lil Durk, you know how I feel about hardcore autotune. That shit just
wasn't for you.
Yeah, it's like you put a zip tie around a cat's neck and you hear it screeching.
Oh my God.
So, hey, man, but who am I, right? The song with Lil Uzi was okay. So we'll see. We will see. I will listen to the album because I'm a fan of Championships. The little EP shit that Meek was putting out wasn't for me, but I didn't really critique it as hard as much because I was like, hey, this is not an album. This is him just putting out some songs. So I'm going to listen. The Highly Advised podcast will give you guys some love when that album comes out.
So speaking of announcements, I know that there was a, even more special announcement coming from BIGCOZY, Too Cozy himself for the people.
Yep. So listeners, I'm just going to put it out there because this is we're wrapping up the show right now. So to my colleagues, my very good friends, you can even say brothers from another mother, from other mothers, I should say. They knew this for a long time. I'm having a baby boy, listeners.
Hey.
BIGCOZY, man.
Yeah.
BIGCOZY is on the way. And actually, by the time you hear this, listeners, BIGCOZY would either be here in the world or we're just about to have him. So with that being said, with me having this really big blessing on the way for my family and I won't be on the podcast.
Wow.
I won't be.
It's crazy.
I'm probably going to be away from the podcast for about 3 to 4 weeks. We'll see how we'll see how things go because when you have a newborn, you got to make sure everything is straight. So I won't be readily available to do the podcast because I definitely have to do my part as being a new dad again to make sure that my son is going to be good, healthy, ready to rock and roll and take over the world as the future tribal chief, as your head of the table, listeners. So since I'll be out, my colleagues who I trust, I believe that they're going to find, I don't know how they're going to give it to you, listeners. We've discussed some things. We thought about bringing in temporary guests to fill in while I'm gone. But I'm pretty sure that my colleagues, they're going to rock and roll and get it under control on what they might do. You might see a dynamic duo. You might see a tandem, like the Atlanta Falcons team before they fucked up with Tom Brady. So you might see that. Or, they might bring in a cast member that might make them like the Three Musketeers. They might bring in 2 people so they could be the 4 Ninja Turtles. For real. So listeners, of course, that doesn't mean I'm gone. Just means I'm on hiatus. I want to thank the listeners for fucking with me. Thank you so much. And please don't stop listening because it's going to be Nigel Spence and a third person or just not. Don't do that. Keep fucking with them. Make sure you follow at the Highly Advised Podcast on Instagram, Advise Highly on Twitter, the YouTube channel, the Highly Advised Podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you comment, like, review. Make sure you say, Nigel, we fuck with you. Say, Spence, we fuck with you. Say, we like your takes or say, we hate your takes. Because when I come back on the podcast and I see bad shit, negative shit, and I'm going to be seeing because they're going to fill me in. I'm going to be coming and breaking your goddamn necks for the ones that don't give us respect.
BIGCOZY, Too Cozy.
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, is there anything else to even be said?
Hey, man, the listeners, just like what we were talking about earlier, don't try it, listeners, because you know your arms are too short to box with God. Your arms are too short. Your arms are way too short to box with Cozy. Way too fucking short. So that's all I have to say, guys. Anything you guys want to say?
Congratulations to Big Cozy, Baby Cozy, Mama Cozy.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother.
Shouts out to the tribe. So
yeah, Mama Oye. Mama Oye.
Man. All right. Congratulations. You have been highly advised. Well, congratulations to Big Cozy, Too Cozy, Lau, of course, my boy. You've been highly advised. We will see y'all later. Have a good one. Enjoy your time.
Boom.
You've been highly advised.
Adios.